Hello students! I'm going to show you how to adjust your MuseScore songs so they print correctly on the page and have proper formatting, avoiding collisions and dangling measures. I've opened one of my pieces so you can see how MuseScore lays out the pages. Let me just switch the view here. I'm going to set it to two-page view here so you can see two pages simultaneously, actually almost three here on the screen. Okay. Page 1 right here is considered a right page, as are all odd-numbered pages. And even-numbered pages, here's page 2, are considered left pages. Left pages are printed on the backside of the right pages. Confused? Let me show you how this prints out. Here you can see that in an open binder, the right page is the page to the right of the binder rings. Page 2 is printed on the back of page 1 and is to the left of the binder rings. Here you can see pages 2 and 3 at the same time, and 4 and 5, etc. Now, back in MuseScore, you can see the right page here. The binder rings would be to the left. And each subsequent pair of pages, like these two here, the binder rings would be in the middle right here. Now, if you plan to put your music in a 3-ring binder or otherwise have it bound, you're going to want to adjust the page margins so that when you punch the holes, you don't cut into the printed music. To do this, go to Layout, Page Settings, and first of all, make sure that the page size is set appropriately. If you live in the US, then you will most likely want to use the letter page size. I think the default is A4 in Europe, which is slightly larger than the US letter. Next, you'll want to modify the left margin for the odd pages, right here. And we're going to set that to 15.9 millimeters. I just found that this is a good measurement. You'll also notice that when I set the odd page left margin, it automatically adjusts the right page, or sorry, the even page margin to be equal. So that's perfect, actually. Now, when I click OK, first of all, I'm going to drag this window down. You can see the margins that we currently have, right? You'll see that there's going to be more space in between these the measures here, right? Just keep an eye on that when I hit OK. So you can see how now we have extra space. And this will make sure that, again, those binder rings aren't going to be punching through the music. Now, one other consequence of this margin change is that some lines or systems aren't going to have as many measures in them as they did before. And that's going to change your page layout a bit. For example, if I undo the page margin change and I scroll to the end of the song, you can see at the end of page 9 here, everything kind of finishes up very neatly on that final line. But when I redo the margin change, notice I actually end up spilling onto a whole other page. And in addition, I now have this dangling single measure, which is something you'd like to avoid, and I will show you how to do that. But before I show you that, let's see what this looks like printed. You can see there is a sufficient amount of space between the holes and the page content. In comparison, here is what it looks like if you don't make enough room for the binder rings. The holes are punching right through the staff, and that looks ugly. So now that I have the page size and margin set, it's time to make sure the measures line up in a way that I want. In some cases, I may want more or fewer measures on a line. A good example is the Allegretto section that begins on page 4. It's awkward to start a new section on the last measure of a system. So I can force the last measure to start a new system by using a line break. To do this, I go to the Breaks and Spacers menu on the left, and I select this line break and drag it to the measure right before the Allegretto section, right? You can see the measure turns red. I let go, and now this line ends with the line break, and you can see the Allegretto starts on its own line. Much better. Scrolling through here, I can find other places where I would like to do a similar thing. here we have a double bar. Again, kind of a new section starting on the last measure of a system. So we'll do the same thing. Drag in the line break. Boom, just like that. And of course, you can always undo this by selecting the line break as it shows here, and pressing the delete key. If you ever change your mind about your decision. Scrolling to the end, we have the dreaded dangling measure, or stranded measure, or whatever you like to call it. Now, there are two ways we can deal with this. The first way is to force the stranded measure onto the previous system. Now, MuseScore knows how much spacing a system should have to look good, and it is generally advisable to avoid making things more compact. But there is a way to do it if you want to, and sometimes it can look alright as long as you don't try to fit too much all on one line. So to fit all of these measures onto one system, first we need to select them. You can do this a few different ways. One, you can click the upper staff here. Just click somewhere where it's empty in the measure, right? If I click too close to this node, I select a beam or something. So click within the empty space. And then I'm going to shift click on the lower staff at the end of the measure range. And now I have a selection here. Another way you can select all of this is by holding down Shift. Hold down Shift and drag a box around the area you would like to select. That also works. I'm going to mention a special case, however, that happens sometimes when you have this dangling measure is actually on its own page. And I've had students ask me, how do you select it when it's on the next page? And I'm going to simulate this by using the spacer here. I'll explain what these do later. I'm going to force, I'm going to force that dangling measure onto its own page. Come on. All right. So now you see the scenario here. We have the last measure on its own page. And here's the problem. You click here, and then when you go to drag the page, you lose your selection. So there's two ways around this. One is to use the scroll wheel. This is easiest done with a mouse, or if your trackpad supports two-finger scrolling. If you scroll up and down, or use the scroll wheel on your mouse, it moves vertically. If you hold down Shift while using the scroll wheel on your mouse, it moves horizontally. And if you have a trackpad that supports both horizontal and vertical scrolling, you should just be able to use that without needing to use the Shift key. But notice I don't lose my selection. So I'm going to scroll over and up, and then Shift click the end here, and you can see this box continues down here, and it's all selected. Another way is to go up to the View menu and select Navigator. This is really nice because you can see this little blue box represents your view of the score, and you can see the whole score here, and you can just drag around like that. And you won't lose your selection doing that either. Click here, Shift click here, right? Additionally, you can actually just shrink the view. If you use your scroll wheel while holding down Control, it will zoom out. So you could just zoom out and click here. It's kind of hard to get the empty space sometimes. Shift click there. You can also set the view through this menu here, and you can have it set so it views two pages, side by side, and that's an easy way to do it as well. So there you go. There's lots of ways to be able to select that dangling measure. I'm going to delete this spacer that I created because that was just for demonstration purposes here. And let's go back to 100% zoom, and I'll hide the navigator for now. You can also use keyboard shortcut F12 to bring that up and hide it very easily. Okay. All right, so anyway, now I'll show you how to make these all into one line. We're going to select this range here, and then on your keyboard, you're going to want to press Shift and the left bracket. Left square bracket. It's just to the right of the letter P. All right. Now, what that does is it reduces the spacing of the notes so that they can eventually fit onto one line. And it does make things a little more scrunched. You can see my finger numbers that I had added here are now kind of too close together. And sometimes things can look awkwardly close together. So you can see how close together these quarter notes are. It all depends on the musical material. You might not mind if things are scrunched, but sometimes things can look bad depending on how much material you're trying to fit together. If trying to squeeze together the this last line actually ends up being too much, if it's too scrunched, you can actually maybe look earlier and find a different line to compact instead. For example, no, I don't want to do that one. Let me try adding an extra measure here. I think this will actually be worse, but just for as an example, I'm going to scrunch these together. So shift left bracket, and you can see it moves them together. That actually doesn't look bad. That actually looks fine. And now you can see that everything has below that has adjusted, and now that all fits on one line at the bottom. So that actually looks better in that case than trying to scrunch everything on the last line. So that's one way to do it. Actually, I'd be quite happy with that solution in this case. Now, if you ever want to reset, the size, the measure width thing, well, you can either just undo. That's one way to do it. Or if it was something that you did a while ago, you can select the range and then go layout, reset, stretch. Just like that. Oh, that's funny. The stretch is actually the curly brace, which is why using shift on the square bracket keys works. Okay. Didn't think of it that way. Okay. Now, there is also a second way of dealing with this problem, which is to space the preceding systems more liberally, causing more measures to be added to the final system. So basically, we'll have more measures here on this last line, which is actually nice in a way because it'll fill out this last page a bit more, but it'll also avoid getting things too scrunched together. To do that, we're going to make use of the line break tool again. You can see some of these systems have like 4 measures. This one has 6. This one has 6 as well. So what we could do is let's make this system only 5. Right? Now you can see we have 3 measures on the final line. And then let's make this one 4. Now we got 4 and 4. And that just that fills things out nicely. You can kind of even go, I'm going to undo that. You can even go further back and see, hey, are there any really obvious places to add more spacing? I wouldn't do it here because this double bar, it's always nice to have double bars at the end of a line. That's nice and tidy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This could maybe space out more. I don't know. You can kind of make decisions based on, anything that looks kind of scrunched together. Maybe do it like that, possibly. Anyway, this is usually the preferred method for dealing with those dangling measures because it avoids scrunching the notes too close together. Use whichever method works best for your situation. But remember, you want to have your page size and margin set properly before messing with the measure spacing, since the number of measures on some of your systems will change if you later decide to make changes to the page dimensions. Lastly, I will show you how to adjust staff spacing to eliminate collisions. Going back to the first page. Ooh, there we go. You can see we have these two staves here are too close together. The note beams here are colliding with one another. So this is where we're going to go back to the palette. Same category here, breaks and spacers, and you can see there's this down arrow and up arrow. Well, these are spacers. Basically, you can either add more space below a staff or more space above a staff. Depending on the situation, they do function somewhat differently, I've noticed. For example, if I add this up spacer to the lower staff here, you can see that it automatically adds a certain amount of space. And I can add to that space or subtract from it. Now if I add the down spacer instead, you can see no space is added automatically. So they both accomplish the same goal. But the up spacer is kind of a little bit more automatic. A lot of times you just basically get just the right amount of spacing. And it's probably a good idea to just throw it onto kind of either one of the measures that needs the space specifically or one nearby, especially if your measure distribution per system changes at some point. Now you notice me doing this, but I'll explain it. To adjust the amount of spacing, you just double click on the spacer and you can see this handle, this blue handle is selected, and I can move it up and down to adjust the spacing. So I think that looks like a good amount of spacing there. There's a little space between the stems and the beams and all that stuff. So now I'd like to also add a little more spacing here because you can see there's not much clearance between this system and the next. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab this up spacer here, double click that, and let's drag that up, and that looks good. Now, as you saw earlier, if you space things out enough, not everything's going to be able to fit on the page, and you can see now everything has moved onto the next page. That is not necessarily the best way to do a page break. I believe we have a page break here. So if I drag this page break here, this means this is going to be the last measure on this page, and everything spaces out accordingly. So that's the better way to do a page break. But anyway, in my case, I just need an up spacer here, and just create a little bit more space there, and I think that looks good. A little clearance, and you can see I've already done that throughout this piece in some spaces, right? But anyway, that should give you a pretty good printout of everything. The other thing to keep in mind as well when you are distributing your measures per page is page turns for the performer. And that's where being able to see where the page breaks are is very useful. So you can see the performer will see these two pages at the same time. The performer will see these two pages at the same time. The page turns are here, right? And you can see the page number on that corner. That's going to be the outside edge. So this is a good spot to turn the page because the left hand has this huge break where it can turn a page. I thought about that while writing this song, and while formatting it. Here's another good example. Right hand is playing alone. There's a double bar, a pause. That's a good place for a page turn. Sometimes it's impossible to get a good page turn without really finagling your measures, but just try and be mindful of it. Now, the last thing I'll address, and this is a little bit more advanced, but it's good to know if you really want to be particular of your page turns. What if instead of having the first page be on a right page, you wanted it on a left page? So when you open up the music, this is on your left, binder rings are here, and this is on the right, and then your page turn is here. That is doable, but it involves a little bit of finagling. Really not that much, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're going to go back out to Layout, Page Settings, and then we're going to reverse this. So instead of putting the margin for the odd pages on the left side, we're going to set this back to 10 and put that margin on the right, 15.9. And of course, the adjustment is automatically made for the even pages. We click OK, and you can see now we get the extra space right in here. The only problem is the page numbers are on the wrong side of the page. They should be on the other side here. So to fix that, we go up to Style, General, and we go to here we go, Header, Footer, Numbers. Now here is the setup for the footer text, and you can see these $P, right? This is code. In fact, here we go. If you hover your mouse, and you can't see the whole tooltip because I'm not capturing the whole video area, but it tells you what all the codes are. But that's not important right now. What we're going to do is for the odd pages, we're going to move the page number from the right to the left. So we're going to delete that, and we're just going to type it over here, $lowercase p, and then we're going to do the same thing here, delete the page number from the left, put it on the right for the even pages. And there you go. You can even see how you could put it in the middle of the footer if you wanted to instead, whatever you want, or you can put it on a header, put it on top. But I'm not going to go into all of that. Click OK, and now you can see the page numbers are on the edge that they should be. The only thing that doesn't happen is we don't get a visual. Like the visual still indicates that these two pages would be open at the same time, but that's not how you would print this. If you wanted it to, page 1 on the left, page 2 on the right, so these would be the two visible pages. 3 and 4, you just have to remember that it's going to be that way when you print it, and of course, printing it appropriately to your printer so you get the pages on the right sides of the page. I'll let you figure that out because that's a little bit beyond this tutorial. But anyway, I hope this helps you to format your pages better for all the awesome songs that you guys are writing. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, whatever it is right now for you. Bye.